The moon hung low over Riverrun, a dull silver coin pressed against a cloud-tattered sky. Catelyn Stark watched its reflection tremble across the dark waters of the Tumblestone, and wondered how many men had bled into that river since hostilities began. A chill breeze hissed through the ramparts, teasing loose strands of her auburn hair. The banners above her, direwolf and trout, gray and red, flapped with impatient fervor. Each snap sounded like a question she could not answer. Behind her, the keep's great courtyard glimmered with torches. Winter was far off yet, but the nights had grown colder, and the sentries clustered close to the flames while trying not to glance at the cell tower that held the Kingslayer. Jaime Lannister's continued captivity clung to Riverrun like frost on iron, invisible until one grasped the handle and felt the ache in the bone. Catelyn felt it whenever she passed beneath the slot windows of his cell. She felt it now, in the knot of tension coiled at the base of her throat. A soft tread approached. Robb, Tywin. She knew the cadence of her son's stride, the confident urgency, the slight hitch from his recent wound at Ashamark. Now healed but ever reminding. He came to stand beside her on the battlement, leather cloak brushing hers. For a moment, they were only mother and child, watching the river that had carried Tullys and Starks alike to adulthood, marriage, and war. "He refuses food again," Robb said at last, voice low. "Perhaps he hopes to waste away and deny us the prize." "No." Catelyn folded her hands to hide their tremor. "Jaime Lannister is too proud to die quietly. He believes we will break before he does." "It is Weimar." Robb's jaw tightened. He looked so young in torchlight. No older, truly, than the boy who once chased Bran through the Godswood at Winterfell. Yet war had carved hard planes into his cheeks. Lord Karstark clamors for his blood each sunrise. He lost 2 sons to the Kingslayer. Edmure counsels caution but offers no answer that quells the bannermen. And our scouts bring whisper that Lord Tywin himself rides east from Harrenhal. We cannot keep Jaime forever. No. There will be a time for decisions. She reached for Robb's gloved hand, surprised by the calluses she felt there. But not at midnight, when the river sings of ghosts. Robb managed a brittle smile. If only the river carried counsel as freely as rumor. Below, an owl skirled through the dark. Catelyn thought of Sansa in distant King's Landing, a hostage in silks, and Arya lost on some god's-forsaken road between here and the Wall. The world had come apart because a child climbed a tower and saw too much. It would not mend simply because one prisoner rotted in a cell. Yet every path she imagined began and ended with Jaime Lannister. So long as he remained in chains, hope and peril coiled about the Stark cause in a single strand. "You should rest," she murmured. "I will," Robb said, though they both knew he would return to his war map and his silent pacing. He kissed her brow, smelling of horse sweat and cold iron, and turned back toward the stairwell, cloak snapping like a banner behind him. Catelyn watched until he vanished. Then she leaned into the merlon, forehead against rough stone, and let herself feel the weight of mercy withheld. Once, in a fever of grief for Bran and fear for her daughters, she had toyed with the thought of releasing Jaime herself, trading steel for innocent lives. That temptation still lurked, quicksilver in her blood. But each dawn she steadied her resolve. Not yet. Not until some fair exchange could be struck. "Honor," Ned would have said, "is a castle built stone by stone. Let one be removed, and the wind finds every crack." She drew a deep breath and turned from the river, determined to keep her own stones unmoved. In the dim cell, Jaime Lannister lay on his pallet, wrists manacled to the wall. The straw beneath him stank of old sweat and vermin. A single tallow candle guttered near the door, gifting him shadows to toy with. A lion's mane on one wall, a wolf's snout on another, depending on how he angled his head. He stared at the shapes and let his mind roam, for the body had grown dull from confinement. Once he had danced through tourneys like sunlight gleaming upon guilt, sword and smile equally lethal. Now he measured days in the rust that crept along his chains. Footsteps approached. He did not bother to rise. The guards rarely entered, save to toss in food. The door scraped open, and Sir Cleos Frey appeared, gaunt cheeks flushed from the stare. His cousin eyed him with a habitual mixture of pity and awe. "My lord," Cleos husked, "Robb Stark sends word. At dawn you will be allowed the yard for light exercise under heavy watch." "How generous." Jaime stretched his shoulders, relishing the quiet pop of tendon. "Shall I bow in gratitude, or is kneeling preferred these days?" Cleos winced. "I counsel caution. Lord Karstark's men linger near the yard. They may forget their honor." "Honor?" Jaime laughed, chains rattling. "If they seek vengeance, let them approach. My sword arm remembered its trade long before their fathers learned which end of a blade to hold." "But you have no sword." "Details. Bring me a stick. I'll kill 3 before they fell me. 4 if the gods favor sport." He cracked a grin that once enchanted maidens from Casterly Rock to Sunspear, but now showed more hunger than mirth. "Go, cousin. Tell the young wolf I shall bask in his sunlight like any proper lion." Memento. Cleos departed. Jaime closed his eyes and breathed the rancid air. The scent recalled the bowels of Eris's dungeons in the last days of the rebellion, when screams seeped through the stone like brine. He had been Kingsguard, golden and sworn, yet powerless amid madness. Now Robb Stark kept him so, toothless, a cymbal rattling in the dark. The difference was name only. He resolved to survive. Not for Cersei, though her face haunted his dreams, nor for father, though Tywin towered behind every thought like a pale stallion of wrath. No, he would live because death was too meek an exit. Jaime Lannister would not yield the game to boys cloaked in wolfskin. Tywin Lannister studied the parchment before him, ink gleaming in the candlelight like fresh blood. The raven's message bore Edmure Tully's seal, a terse refusal of exchange. Not for gold, not for prisoners, not for titles. Jaime's captivity remained unaltered. Across the tent, Sir Kevan waited, helm tucked beneath one arm. Beyond the canvas walls, the Lannister host bristled, campfires glowing like embers strewn upon the Trident's western reach. After days of forced march, the men were restless. So was their lord. "They gamble with stakes they do not grasp," Tywin said at last, voice as spare as the parchment. "Edmure plays at lordship, while his nephew parades as king. They tempt annihilation." Kevan inclined his head. "If we press Riverrun, Robb Stark must abandon the west or risk his uncle's fall. The boy cannot hold both fronts." "Indeed." Tywin rolled the scroll and bound it with black ribbon. "Send riders to Harrenhal. I want Sir Gregor assembling a vanguard. We move by fortnight's end." "Father," a colder voice intruded. Cersei swept into the tent, silk gown trailing crimson like a comet. Her green eyes blazed with restrained fury. "Another raven from King's Landing. The small council grows uneasy. Stannis Baratheon sails. The fleet is untested, Joffrey unbridled. They beg you return." Tywin considered his daughter. She had ridden hard, dust lining every fold of her gown. Vanity sacrificed to desperation. "My place is where victory lies. Peace in the capital is worthless if Jaime dies." "Man, Jaime will not die," Cersei snapped. "Even the Starks know his worth. They delay only to wound us, but each delay costs the realm. The North can never sit the Iron Throne. Should the River Lords bleed us dry, Stannis will claim the ashes." Kevan intervened softly. "We might parley. Offer double the ransom. A hostage of our choosing." "Hostage?" Cersei's lip curled. "Whose child will we send? One of Tommen's kittens, perhaps?" Tywin raised a hand. Silence fell. "There will be no parley. Riverrun falls or surrenders. Either returns Jaime. The Starks think themselves honor-bound. We shall teach them honor ways less than hunger." "Bane." Cersei's shoulders slumped, but her eyes still promised fire. "If you fail, I will not forgive you." Tywin's gaze never wavered. "If I fail, there will be none left to forgive." He turned to Kevan. "See to the orders. We ride at dawn." Cersei spun on her heel and vanished. Outside, a hawk cried above the Trident, an omen none cared to name. In the Queen's ballroom of the Red Keep, Sansa knelt beside a high window, threading honeysuckle blossoms into a chain. It was a child's task, fit for a daydream. yet it gave her fingers purpose while her mind drifted. Below, the narrow streets of King's Landing wound like knotted rope, swollen with merchants, sparrows, whispered plots. She imagined she could pinpoint every footfall if she listened long enough. The clack of a cobbler's hammer, the hush of septa prayers, the distant roar of the lion banners as they rippled above Maegor's holdfast. She wondered if her mother gazed upon a river at this very moment, thinking of her. The thought tightened around her heart like fresh twine. If only there were ravens' fast wings swift enough to bridge their longing. Steps approached. Sir Boros Blount entered, face red from exertion. "The Queen summons you." Sansa rose, smoothing her skirt. She followed the Kingsguard through labyrinthine corridors until they reached a small audience chamber. Jaime Lannister waited alone beside a map-strewn table, one finger tracing the coastline of Blackwater Bay. She looked up, lips curving. "You may sit." Sansa perched on the edge of a cushioned chair. The Queen's warmth was as natural as milk curdling in sunlight. Danger always lurked beneath. "News from Riverrun," Cersei began, voice honey-thick. "Your brother holds my own dear brother still. The Starks are tenacious." Her nails clicked against the table. "Tell me, Lady Sansa, do you believe your family will spare Jaime's life?" Sansa's pulse fluttered. I believe my lady mother seeks peace. She values honor above all." "Honor?" The Queen laughed, a hard sound. "Honor feeds no armies. Your brother should learn that." She tilted her head, studying Sansa like a jeweler appraising flawed jade. "Perhaps you might write to your mother. Ask her to remind Lord Robb how fragile a palace may be when enemies gather at every gate." Sansa lowered her eyes. "If your grace commands." "I do." Cersei walked to her, lifted Sansa's chin with a polished fingertip. "Convince Catelyn Stark that the safest road leads south. Else, we shall pave it ourselves with bones." The threat needed no elaboration. Sansa felt the room tilt. "I will write." "Good." The Queen withdrew. "You may go." Outside, the hallway walls suddenly pressed close. Sansa clutched her blossom chain, petals bruising beneath her grip, and wondered whether the Starks of Winterfell would ever hear the note of desperation in her ink. Far to the east, beyond the neck of Moat Cailin, the first leaves of autumn tinged gold. Theon Greyjoy rode beneath them with 10 men, their iron-born braids clinking with rusted rings. Winterfell's towers rose ahead, soft in morning haze. Smoke curled from smithy chimneys. Dogs barked. The mill wheel creaked in its lazy churn. To Theon's eye, the castle seemed small as a child's toy, waiting to be plucked from the board. He tightened his reins. Captain Black Lauren reined beside him. "Orders, Prince." "Prince. .2." The word throbbed like wine behind Theon's temples. He thought of Robb, once brother in all but name, now king in the north, and wondered whether friendship could withstand the weight of crowns. "We take the castle," Theon said, voice hard, "but quietly. If we spill too much blood, the Maester's ravens will fly to Riverrun before nightfall." Lauren grinned, teeth crooked, quiet as waves on rock. Theon forced a smile. Somewhere within Winterfell's halls, Bran and Rickon might still play chasing games beneath colored glass. He imagined their faces when he strode into the great hall, wearing gray wools pilfered from dead men. The thought soured his stomach, but duty, yes, duty, hardened his resolve. The Ironborn followed strength, nothing more. Father would judge him by conquest alone. A wind gusted through the leaves, scattering gold like coins at a jester's feet. Theon spurred his horse. In Riverrun's Godswood, Robb Stark knelt by the tranquil pool, staring into black water. He had not prayed since the day Father's head adorned the King's Landing walls, yet tonight the air felt strange, brimming with portent. The weirwood's crimson leaves whispered secrets older than kingdoms. He spoke softly. "If you can hear, let your wisdom guide me. The realm fractures. My men clamor for vengeance, for salvage, for home. Each victory costs another family their sons." The pool offered only stillness. Yet a change stirred the back of Robb's mind, a sense of approaching tides unseen. He rose, brushing knees clean of damp earth. and almost collided with Lord Rickard Karstark. "Your Grace," Karstark said, voice iron rasp. "Night curfew finds you alone. I feared for safety." Robb read the man's eyes. They burned with the same fever that flared each time Jaime's name surfaced. "The woods are guarded, not against ghosts." Karstark's gaze flicked toward the keep. "The king's lair lives while my sons do not. Lords talk, men whisper. They wonder whether the young wolf has lost his fangs." The accusation cut deep. Robb squared his shoulders. "Justice will be served in its hour." Karstark stepped closer, breath white in chill air. "If you will not act, others will. A wolf that forgets to hunt is soon prey." Robb's hand found the hilt of his sword almost unconsciously. For a moment, two flames met, grief-fueled outrage against youthful sovereignty. Then Karstark bowed stiffly and withdrew among the graying trunks, his boots crunching leaves until the night consumed him. Robb turned back to the pool. In its mirror he saw himself wearing a crown too heavy, reflected against stars that held no mercy. Dawn painted Riverrun's inner yard gold and rose. Jaime Lannister emerged between guards, muscles protesting after weeks of confinement. The light struck his face and he closed his eyes, drinking it like wine. At the yard's far end, Northmen formed a cautious semicircle. Pikes raised. Lord Karstark's men glowered among them, lips curling 7 different ways to Sunday. A wooden practice sword lay on a barrel. Jaime flexed his shackled wrists. He still wore irons, though linked by only a short chain, and picked up the stick. It was well balanced if crude. He twirled it, savoring the whir of air. Robb Stark watched from the parapet, flanked by gray wind. The direwolf's amber gaze mirrored its master's weary calm. Jaime offered a mocking salute with the stick. Gray wind, bared fangs. A pair of men advanced, one gray-bearded, one with a scarred cheek. Jaime recognized the older as Harrion Karstark. Or was it Eddard? He could never recall which dead son belonged to which corpse. No matter, both sought his blood now. They attacked. Jaime parried the first blow and sidestepped the second, dancing on packed earth. The chain between his wrists hampered reach but lent unexpected cunning. He could trap an opponent's weapon between the links. With a flick, he disarmed the scarred man, spun, and cracked the stick across the Uter's temple. The crowd hissed. Jaime felt laughter bubbling, but swallowed it. Every cheerless face below the battlement promised retribution. More men surged. He thwarted them, each strike echoing across the stone. Sweat slicked his back. His limbs remembered rhythm. For 10 luminous heartbeats, he was Jaime again. Lion of jousts, storm of steel. Then a pike caught his ankle. He staggered. A fist smashed his jaw. Pain exploded white. He dropped to one knee. A shout rang. "Enough!" Robb descended the stair, cloak billowing, hand raised. The soldiers hesitated. Jaime spat blood and grinned up at the boy king. "Careful, Stark. They'll say you pity me." Robb's eyes were cold. "Bring him in." Jaime climbed to his feet. As the guards seized his arms, he winked at the snarling Karstarks. "Next time bring swords. I'll write your names with the pieces." They hauled him away. Above, the banners cracked. Jaime could almost taste the storm brewing behind each taut face. A maelstrom that would break or bind them all. Good, he thought. Let the river rise. Atop the twins, Walder Frey sat in his drafty solar, gnawing a pigeon pie. Juice dribbled into his beard. Beside him, his latest young wife poured watered wine with the detached air of a shepherdess milking goats she did not own. A messenger kneeled trembling before the Lord of the Crossing. So the young wolf keeps Lannister gold caged. Walder mused, mouth full. Bold. Or stupid. The messenger dared no reply. Walder slurped his wine. Send word to Riverrun. Remind Lord Tully of our alliance sealed by betrothal. My daughter Rosalind waits for her wolf lord's embrace. A snort echoed from the shadows where his sons loitered. Walder ignored them. Also send ravens to Lord Tywin. Inform him that despite gross discourtesy from certain parties, House Frey remains a loyal friend to the realm. He licked grease from his fingers, eyes gleaming. A crossing goes 2 ways after all. The messenger fled. Walder leaned back, satisfied. Bridges built over time could be burned in an instant, and in the char, opportunity always sprouted. The Raven arrived at Riverrun in a storm-grayed dusk. Edmure Tully broke its seal and carried the parchment to Robb and Catelyn in the Great Hall. Fires roared, meat cracked on spits, yet a hush followed Edmure's entrance, as if the bird itself still hovered overhead. "It's from Walder Frey," Edmure said, voice tight. "He demands confirmation of your intended marriage to Roslyn, else he will reconsider passage rights." Catelyn's stomach knotted. Robb's gaze slid to the face of Talisa Megier across the table. A healer from Volantis, whose gentle courage had caught his heart during days of wound and fever. Talisa bowed her head, but her dark eyes glimmered with unshed truth. Robb stood. "Lord Frey's bridge aided our cause once. Our thanks remain. But we do not accept threats from any man, friend or no." Murmurs rippled. Gretchen Umber slammed a fist on the table. "The Freys are craven weasels. Let the Crannogmen ferry us through the bogs. We need no stinking bridge." Catelyn sensed the ground shift beneath them. Jaime's captivity had kept Tywin's wrath at bay, but Frey ambition threatened their flank. She looked to Robb, saw in his face the same tangle of duty and desire that had once driven her to carry a blade into a helpless boy's chamber. Love could overturn empires, or drown them. Lord Roose Bolton's cool voice carried. "Bridges may be crossed again, given time. But time is a coin we spend too freely. The Lannisters march. Winter hardly waits for weddings." Later that night, Catelyn sought Robb in his chamber. He stood at the window, lamplight painting shoulders of bronze. Talisa sat tending a soldier's stitched leg. She rose and excused herself when Catelyn entered. "Mother," Robb began. She raised a hand. "I will not speak of your heart, only of your crown." She quoted father's words. "A lord's first marriage is to his duty." Robb's hands clenched the sill. "I know. But I will not bind myself to promises forged in haste, not when lives hang upon brittle vows." "A broken vow," she said gently, "may cut deeper than steel." Outside, thunder growled, as though the river gods disputed them. Robb turned, eyes shining. "If Jaime were free, father might still live. I cannot let the fate of Westeros hinge upon one prisoner, one bridge, one forced bed. There must be another way." Catelyn stepped forward, touching his cheek. "Then find it quickly, for wars are won by choices made before dawn breaks." She kissed his brow and left, heart aching for the boy she once watched chase fireflies across Winterfell's lawn. Jaime dreamed of wildfire. Green flames licked the sky, painting the capital in ghastly light. He smelled charred flesh, heard the high keening of bells melted in their towers. On the steps of the Great Seeptee, Aerys Targaryen laughed, cloak aflame, and shouted, "Burn them all!" Jaime's sword pierced the king's back again and again until the voice grew hoarse and silent. But each time he withdrew the blade, the wound closed, and Aerys laughed anew. The wildfire swelled, devouring the Red Keep, Riverrun, Casterly Rock. Each keep rose, then crumbled into emerald smoke. Finally, only a single child remained, standing before the Iron Throne. A girl with auburn hair and eyes like frost-rimmed sky. She pointed at him. "Kinslayer," she whispered, the world echoing the word. Jaime woke gasping, sweat pooling in hollow collarbones. The cell was dark, the candle long dead. A chill wormed through the stones. Somewhere, a raven croaked. He could not tell if the dream had ended. Weeks passed. Hawks circled above Tywin's host as it pushed east, trampling fields black and barren after harvest. Refugees fled before the golden tide, clutching children, goats, what little hope remained. Keen-eyed outriders reported that Robb Stark had withdrawn toward the Twins, leaving garrisons to hold Harrenhal and Moat Cailin. Tywin permitted himself a thin smile. Wolves retreat, the lion advances. At dusk a scout galloped into camp, silks torn by arrow feathers. "The Starks sue for parley," he cried. "They offer a trade, the Kingslayer for 2 Stark girls and safe passage of their host north." Tywin's smile hardened to glass. 2 girls. Arya had vanished, rumor placing her from Saltpans to Bravos. Sansa remained. If Stark offered a ghost and a maiden swaddled in the Lannister guards, the game twisted anew. That night Tywin sat alone with quill and parchment. He penned a reply of silky courtesy, accepting parley at the Crossroads Inn beneath guest right. While his ink dried, he gazed at the candle flame and measured every flicker against visions of Casterly Rock's ancestral halls, of House Lannister's future perched on a blade's edge. To rule, one must wield fear like a sculptor's chisel, carving men into shapes that fit the dream. He sealed the letter with wax, stamped by a roaring lion. When the writer left, Tywin rested neither body nor mind, for sleep was a luxury of those who did not yet suspect defeat. Catelyn Stark rode through chill rain toward the inn at the crossroads. Mist coiled about hedgerows, muting birdsong. She wore a plain cloak of river gray, unadorned. No banners flew beside her small escort. Robb had wanted to accompany her, but she forbade it. A king should not walk into a lion's jaws. Even under guest right, the gods often turn their faces away. At the inn, a fire crackled within a soot-scarred hearth. Catelyn entered to find Tywin Lannister, seated at the trestle table, armor gleaming beneath travel-stained wool. His pale eyes glanced up, cold as snow-fed streams. Lady Stark, Lord Tywin. They sat opposite. The innkeep's boy placed bread and cheese between them, then scurried away. Rain drummed the roof. For a heartbeat, they simply listened to water and fire. "Where are my daughters?" Catelyn asked. "Safe." Tywin's tone was iron upon anvil. "Return my son, and you shall have them both. And peace." She met his gaze, found almost nothing there. No fatherly anguish, only calculation. Peace means many things. The North was plunged into war by Lannister steel. Wars are won in halls like this. He tore bread calmly. "Your house holds Jaime. Mine holds Sansa. One needs the other. The rest is waste." Nensiu. Catelyn's fingers curled around the mug. She imagined Robb, Talisa, the men camped at Old Stones, the graves behind them. Peace. Could she barter one life for thousands? Tywin leaned forward. "Give me my son. I will send your daughters north under Lannister guard. I will command my army to hold at the Trident until winter's end. No blade shall cross the neck." She wanted to believe. Yet the memory of Ned's severed head glared behind her eyes. "And after winter?" "After winter," Tywin said, "we speak again. Let the land heal. Let the children bury the past." "Menemni Torsin. Alarkaner. Words come easy?" she murmured. He shrugged. "As easy as breaking vows to kings, perhaps." At that, his gaze sharpened. "Do not think me blind, Lady Stark. The seven wait for no man, but my patience wanes. Choose." Catelyn closed her eyes. Bells tolled in memory. Wedding bells at Riverrun, iron bells on the wall. The lone bell of Baelor's sept. She heard them all, one after another, until their peals became a single note. Fate's hammer, striking anvil. When she opened her eyes, her voice was steady. "I will bring your proposal to King Robb. He alone may answer for the North." "Done?" Tywin inclined his head, though she saw satisfaction ghost across his face. "As you wish." They rose. No handshakes, no shared bread. Guest right was courtesy, not trust. Outside, rain had gentled to a fine mist. Catelyn mounted her horse, heart leaden. Behind her, the inn's windows glowed like distant eyes, watching the road vanish into shadow. She wondered if she had just traded the future of Westeros on the promise of a lion whose claws dripped red. Deep within Riverrun's cell tower, Jaime paced. Each rumble of thunder overhead felt like a war drum. When the door opened, he expected another gruel bowl. But instead, two guards entered bearing a chest. They unshackled his wrists, opened the lid, and revealed a suit of gilded mail bearing the Lion of Lannister. "Dress," one barked. Jaime cocked an eyebrow. "So soon?" "I haven't even combed my hair." They thrust the armor at him. He donned it, muscles rippling beneath bruised skin. As the last buckle fastened, Lord Rickard Karstark appeared, sword drawn. "You ride at dawn," Karstark said. "A trade has been struck." But know this. I will meet you on a field one day, Kingslayer, and take from you what you stole. Then don't die. Jaime smiled thinly. I look forward to it. Bring sons enough. I'd hate the bout to end too soon. Karstark's blade hovered near Jaime's throat before he turned away. Alone again, Jaime flexed gloved fingers. The weight of steel settled upon him like a second skin. Chains had not broken his spirit. Perhaps armor would mend it. He still had one hand's breadth between him and death. That would suffice. He sat on the pallet and waited for dawn, heart thrumming quieter than the storm outside, yet alive, fiercely alive. Robb Stark read the parchment twice, then a third time. The fire crackled, Talisa's hand warm atop his own. Around them, banners drooped in lamplit calm, but thunder echoed across the ford. Edmure paced. Greatjon swore softly. Roose Bolton watched with pale, hooded eyes. At dawn, Robb said, voice hoarse, we ride to the crossing. Jaime for my sisters. A fortnight's truce. And after? Edmure asked. We gather at Moat Cailin. Fortify the neck. Winter will decide the rest. Nadenho. Greatjon thumped the table. Let the lions stew in their own gold while we feast on venison. A fine plan. Roose Bolton's lips formed a ghost of a smile. A fine plan, if the lions honor it. Talisa squeezed Robb's fingers. He glanced at her and saw hope mingled with dread. He signed the parchment. Sealed north and riverlands with wax shaped of direwolf and trout. And as he pressed the signet, he felt the weight of decisions forged in rainy inns and moonlit godswoods. Each choice a stone laid in the unseen road ahead, leading to a place he could not yet name. The night before departure, Catelyn lingered outside Jaime's cell. The door stood open, guards gone to ready the prisoner for travel. She stepped inside. Jaime sat on the pallet, armored and shackled at the ankles. Lady Stark, he greeted, mocking courtesy. No titles. She studied him. The torchlight gilded his hair. Even battered, he bore a careless grace Ned would have distrusted on sight. You are to be exchanged for my daughters. If harm befalls them, harm. He chuckled. The capital is a carnival of harm, but your girl Sansa plays the courteous hostage well. She may yet enjoy the ride north. Arya. He shrugged. Small thing? Dark hair? Haven't seen her. The Hound said she fled the city disguised as a mouse, or some such nonsense. Catelyn's pulse quickened. Fear, hope, both. If my younger daughter is not found, then perhaps she's safer than we are. Jaime leaned forward, chains clinking. Tell me, does your son still ride the wolf into battle? Men say Grey Wind fights at his side like a shadow given flesh. Leave Robb from your lips. As you wish. He flashed a grin. Will you escort me yourself? I should like the company. She ignored the barb. When next you see your sister, tell her the North remembers. His smile faded. Something flickered behind his eyes. Sorrow. Surprise. But it vanished. I will give her your love. Catelyn turned and left, cloak swirling. Behind her, Jaime began humming a tune. One her father once sang when the river bloomed with summer lilies. The notes followed her up the stair like ghosts. At dawn, 2 columns departed Riverrun. One bearing Jaime Lannister under heavy guard, the other bearing silent prayers and brittle hopes. The mist smelled of wet earth and distant pine. As the gates groaned shut, a raven launched from the highest tower, wings beating northward. None could say whether it carried tidings of peace or seeds of ruin, and beneath its flight the river rolled on, indifferent to banners, to bargains, to the hearts of men. Kaknol. Grey dawn seeped across the tumblestone, smothering the river in a thin veil of silver that blurred shoreline and sky together. The column escorting Jaime Lannister pushed out of Riverrun's western gate before sunrise, torches guttering in a wind that tasted of pine smoke and rain-washed iron. 20 Northmen rode at the vanguard, Karstarks and Umbers mainly, hungry for any excuse to spill the prisoner's blood, while a second score followed behind with supply wagons and pennons furled. At the column's heart, mounted on a rangy dapple mare, Jaime rode with wrists manacled and a short chain threaded through his saddle pommel. 2 riders flanked him at all times. The tall, great-cloak Robert Glover to his right, dour as bare stone, and the younger Sir Wendell Manderley to his left, cheeks ruddy and eyes always shifting toward the tree line for ambush that never came. For the first league, no one spoke. Hooves clopped and leather creaked and riverbirds cried overhead. Jaime breathed cool dawn air through split lips and let the ache of bruises settle in his muscles. Honest pain, almost comforting after weeks of damp straw and stale bread. He rolled one shoulder beneath the gilded mail they'd permitted him, and felt the bruise on his jaw pulse like an angry ember. Every jolt of the mare's stride whispered a reminder that he was chained, wounded, and vastly outnumbered. None of it mattered. Life remained, which meant the game remained, and there were always moves to find. When the sky brightened enough to reveal pale strips of cloud, Robert Glover finally spoke. "If you attempt flight," he said in a voice that sounded like it had never laughed, "I'll hamstring the horse and make you walk the rest of the road barefoot." Jaime smiled. "Would you now? A man might think you harbor ill feeling toward Lannisters." "I harbor memories," Glover answered. "That's enough." "Then cherish them," Jaime said. "I plan to give you many more before this dance is done." Sir Wendell barked an uncertain laugh that died at Glover's glare. The young Manderley coughed and turned his eyes forward again, reins clutched so tight his knuckles blanched. By mid-morning they crested a low ridge and left the tumblestone behind. The landscape changed. Fields once green now yellowing beneath the encroach of autumn, low stone fences, lonely shepherd huts roofed in sod. Where villages stood there were smoking ruins or boarded doors. Tywin's foragers had ranged far before marching east. Jaime watched crows spiral above a roofless sept and thought of Maegor's holdfast, of the bells melted to slag, of the mad king's screams. Some cruelties echoed forever if you knew where to listen. At midday they paused by a willow-shaded pool to water the horses. The air smelled of damp leaves and frog scum, and dragonflies drifted like fragments of stained glass. Guards fanned out. One knelt to fill a waterskin. Jaime dismounted stiff-legged and flexed his fingers as far as chains allowed. 2 Karstark men stood near the water, speaking low. Jaime caught the glint of steel at one's belt and grinned. "Does the Lord of Karhold issue knives to every son, or only those he means to waste?" The larger man turned, face red-veined with drink, though it was barely noon. "We waste lions the way lions waste deer," he said. "Easy." Glover stepped between them. "Enough." His tone cut like whetted iron. "Mount up." Jaime lifted an eyebrow but said no more. They rode on. Catelyn Stark's smaller party followed several miles behind, screened by outriders. She rode beside Maester Vyman and her brother Edmure, hands tucked in the wool folds of her cloak. The air cooled as clouds stacked into a gray wall in the west, a weather front sweeping off the sunset sea with promise of rain by nightfall. Edmure adjusted his reins. "I dislike this road. Too open. Scouts from Harrenhal might spy the banners." "We carry no banners," Catelyn reminded him. "Wolves travel in silence," Vyman said, voice mild. "The phrase is Hoster Tully's, I believe." Edmure grimaced. "Father coined it for river strikes, not for trusting in Lannister mercy." "Mercy is not part of this," Catelyn answered. "Leverage is. We bargain a life for 2, and a winter's grace besides. If Jaime escapes or falls, Tywin will rise like floodwater and drown every village between here and the neck." Edmure frowned but said no more. The maester glanced at Catelyn's tense profile. "My lady," he ventured, "when last you prayed at the Heart Tree, what answer did you seek?" "I sought none," she said without turning. "Answers are for those who still think the gods listen." "They listen," Vyman said. "They simply choose strange tongues." The wind lifted a strand of Catelyn's hair across her cheek. She brushed it aside and stared at the broken line of riders vanishing over the next ridge. Her son Robb was not among them, yet she felt his fate moving there, a knot tightening with every hoofbeat. Far to the east, within the dank undercrofts of Harrenhal, Qyburn knelt beside Sir Gregor Clegane, tightening a leather strap around the mountain's forearm. The warlord's bare shoulders glistened with oil, scars like pale rope across a field of once broken bones. Nearby, a brazier hissed, the odor of elf's root and death's head mushroom mixed with hot iron. Lord Tywin's messenger waited by the archway. "The lion moves upon the twins," he said. "Your men ride within the hour." Sir Gregor grunted. Qyburn inserted a long, thin needle into a vial of murky liquid and drew back the plunger. "For the pain?" he said softly. He plunged the needle into the thick cord of muscle above the mountain's elbow. Gregor's brow furrowed like a slab of granite struck by rain, then smoothed again. "Pain is for lesser men," he rumbled. Yet he did not flinch when Qyburn withdrew the needle. "The substance dulls more than pain," Qyburn murmured. "It quickens the blood, stills the tremor. My gift, sir." "Save your gifts for the crows." Gregor rose, towering even in torchlight. "We ride to break a boy, king." The messenger bowed. Qyburn watched them leave, fingertips stained from the elixir. He licked one absent-mindedly, tasting copper and something sweeter, and considered how many hearts the mountain might rupture before nightfall. King Robb Stark stood outside the command pavilion on the banks of the Blue Fork, armor half-laced, hair damp from drizzle. Gray wind paced nearby, hackles bristling each time a lightning flare flickered in the northern clouds. Roose Bolton emerged from beneath the pavilion flap, pale eyes glittering like frost through half-lidded disdain. "My scouts returned," Bolton said. "The Freys strengthened their guardhouses on both river towers. Crossbows man every merlin. Nowhere to share." Robb tugged a gauntlet strap tight. "They'll grant us passage once the trade completes." "Perhaps," Bolton replied. "Or perhaps they recall affronts not yet answered." His gaze slid toward Grey Wind, who bared teeth at the unspoken threat. Robb fastened the last buckle. "Catelyn will soothe Lord Walder's pride. We honor the bridge toll when we cross north again." Bolton's expression remained as smooth as ice on still water. "Young men trust in promises, older men trust in coin, oldest men trust in steel." He inclined his head, then withdrew into shadow. Talisa approached, cloak hooded against the mist. "You barely slept." "Sleep will come in winter," Robb said. "Or in graves." She touched the bandage beneath his gorget, a scar not yet fully knitted. "I fear more for your heart than your wounds." "It is the same," he whispered. He drew her hand to his lips, kissed the knuckles, then stepped back as Lords Umber and Mormont strode up for counsel. Talisa watched him go, the battlefield already gathering around his shoulders like a mantle of invisible snow. Theon Greyjoy crouched atop Winterfell's outer wall, with rain dripping from the hood of a borrowed watchcloak. Below, the courtyard lay silent, save for the tinkle of water from the old well, and the snort of a half-dozing Garron in the stables. Most of the garrison had ridden south with Roderick Castle 3 days past, drawn by news of an Ironborn raid on Torrhen's Square. A raid Theon himself had planned as decoy. Only a skeleton force remained. A dozen green boys and old Sir Roderick Stewart. Black Lauren climbed beside him, rope knotted to the merlon. "Gates unbarred," Lauren whispered. Old Nan told a cook to leave it half-latched for Castle's return. "Kind woman?" "Kind and blind," Theon muttered. He peered across the yard to the great hall, thinking of Bran, of Rickon, of childhood lessons in archery, where Robb stood behind him, correcting his elbow. They were ghost fingers now. He unclasped the cloak and tossed it aside. "We move." Ironborn filtered over the wall like shore crabs. Steel flashed dull in the gloom. One boy saw them and cried out. Lauren's axe split his cry in two. The echo died beneath rain. Within an hour, Winterfell's towers blazed with torches, guards bound, victory horns sounding in crude imitation of those the Greyjoys blew on Pike. Theon strode into the great hall, wet hair plastered to cheeks, salt still clinging to his boots. Bran Stark sat in a high-backed chair, eyes wide, Hodor looming uncertainly behind. "This is my home, Bran," Theon announced, voice pitched to Carrie. "You know me. The castle is mine now. Ours, under Prince Balon's banner. Yield obedience and no harm will come to you." Lightning flickered through the slit windows, revealing the terror sketched upon the younger boy's face. Hodor said, Hodor, softly, as though it might be a shield. Theon waited for Bran's reply and heard in the hush the steady trickle of rain through a gap in the roof. Outside, wolves howled. Real wolves this time, not banners. The world was tilting. He steadied himself against imagined tides. 3 days' ride south, the exchange site had been chosen. A flat meadow by the Crossroads Inn, where 3 ancient oaks met at their roots and made a natural circle of shelter. By custom, no more than 20 armed men per side might enter the ring. On the morning of the appointed day, gray clouds bunched overhead like ranks of sullen footmen, and drizzle turned the ground to thin mud. Jaime sat astride his mare just inside the boundary, wrists still chained but unlinked from the saddle. Robert Glover held the free end. Opposite, Sir Adam Marbrand commanded the Lannister escort. 20 red-cloaked knights with bright war lances, their armor polished despite the mud. Between the forces stood a single overturned wagon, repurposed as barrier. A bannerstaff jutted from its bed, bearing a rag of gray direwolf entwined with crimson lion. The rag flapped irregularly, soaking dark at the tips. Near the wagon, Maester Pycelle fussed over 2 hooded girls. One stood tall and rigid, Sansa, Jaime guessed, from the poise, and the other smaller form kept her head down, hands folded. Jaime narrowed his eyes. Arya perhaps, or perhaps not. Hard to see under those hoods. Catelyn Stark rode forward, Edmure at her side. Tywin Lannister emerged from the red ranks, golden cloak shedding droplets. 2 men who had once met at a wedding tourney now faced each other across wet grass and corpses of old faith. Tywin inclined his head a fraction. The terms stand. My son for your daughters. A fortnight's truce honored on my blood. On mine as well, Catelyn said. Release them first. Tywin gestured. Pycelle led the girls to the wagon. From his vantage, Jaime noted Sansa's rigid shoulders, the slump of the other. Something stirred in him? Pity? He quelled it. Glover clicked his tongue and nudged Jaime forward. Karstark men shadowed them with blades half drawn. At the wagon, Jaime dismounted. The mud sucked at his boots. Sansa lifted her head then, and their eyes met. Hers were ice blue, ringed red from weeping yet surprisingly calm. Jaime offered a lopsided smile. Little bird, he murmured, flying home at last. She said nothing. The younger hooded figure did not look up. Jaime frowned. Too still, too compliant. But Glover wrenched his chain and shoved him toward Pycelle. The old maester produced a heavy iron key, hands trembling. Hold still, my lord. Jaime stood as the manacles were unlocked. Pins and needles lanced through his forearms. He resisted the urge to rub circulation back, unwilling to grant his captors the spectacle. Pycelle dropped the chain in the mud. Tywin beckoned Jaime across the boundary. Glover hesitated, but Catelyn nodded. Go. Our vow is spoken. Jaime walked, each step squelching. Lightning flickered again, and thunder rolled off the hills. The world smelled of damp straw and oiled mail. He passed the wagon and joined the crimson line. A Lannister knight draped a fresh cloak about his shoulders. Tywin pressed a hand to his son's arm. Brief, no more. Behind them, Catelyn guided the girls toward her party. Sansa nearly stumbled in mud. Edmure steadied her. The smaller hooded girl kept pace without aid, but still did not lift her face. Jaime started to speak. Some jape about northern welcomes, when a Karstark shout split the air. Treachery! Steel hissed from scabbards. 2 of Rickard Karstark's men rushed the wagon. One pointed at the smaller hostage, voice raw. That is no Stark. Where is the wolf girl? Instant panic. The hood fell back from the small form to reveal a freckled tavern wench bound at the wrists, gagged beneath the hood's collar. Sansa cried out. Edmure swore. The wench sobbed uselessly. Catelyn reeled, fury whitening her face. Where is Arya? Tywin's expression did not change. The child was lost from the city months ago. He called over the wagon top. I offered you 2 Stark girls. It appears you misplaced one. Before Catelyn could reply, Lord Rickard Karstark drew his sword and roared, "False father! False treaty!" He charged, raining mud. His men followed. Chaos erupted, Northmen scrambling, Lannister knights lowering lances, the ragged banner whipping between. Robb Stark was not present to command restraint. Glover tried to block Karstark but was shouldered aside. Karstark's blade swung at Jaime, who had no weapon. Instinct took over. Jaime caught a discarded spear shaft, jerked it free of core grip, and parried the first strike. Steel clanged. Sparks flew. He felt the old heat flood his veins. Battle. Pure and savage. Karstark hacked again. Jaime ducked, rammed the spear butt into the lord's knee. The man staggered. A Lannister knight galloped by, spurting mud, lance tip grazing Karstark's pauldron. Northmen closed. Lions surged. Rain became sheets, drumming helms, turning field into churned pig slop. Catelyn's voice cut through. "Stop! Guessed right!" But guessed right drowned beneath bloodlust. A crossbow bolt thunked into a Karstark's chest. He fell clawing at the shaft. Someone slashed the tavern girl's bonds. She fled screaming. Sansa was dragged by Edmure toward distant trees, while Umber men formed a shield knot around them, shouting oaths to every god who ever watched men slaughter each other in bargain fields. Jaime found himself back to back with Adam Marbrand, trading blows against Umber axes. "So much for truce," Marbrand grunted. "Some knights," Jaime panted. "I almost missed tournament etiquette." He parried a savage cut and countered with the spear blade, grazing an Umber's shoulder. Mud sucked feet. Thunder drowned cries. Somewhere a horse neighed in mortal terror. Then a horn blast sounded from the tree line, a single long throaty note. Both sides froze, thinking perhaps Riverrun's host had arrived, or Frey's from the bridge. But the horn sounded a second time, then a third, low as bear growl. From the north slope emerged gray silhouettes, bannermen of Roose Bolton, their flayed man sigils limp in downpour. At their head rode the Pale Lord himself, cloak crimson-lined, though he wore no helm. His gaze drifted across the carnage with dispassionate curiosity, as if studying kennels after a dogfight. Bolton raised a hand. "Lady down arms," he called. His tone was soft, yet each syllable carried. "My men hold crossbows strung. Continue, and we feather you all indiscriminately." Both houses. Silence, broken only by rain hammering shields. Karstark bled from a cut on his temple, chest heaving. Jaime tasted copper in his mouth, unknown whose blood it was. Tywin regarded Bolton, eyes narrowed. "You overstep." Bolton inclined his head. "My liege, King Robb, tasked me to ensure safe withdrawal upon terms agreed. Those terms have been soiled, yet slaughter aids nothing." Catelyn found her voice. "You speak of safe withdrawal after deceit. Lord Tywin, you bargaining corpses." Better. Tywin's cloak clung wet to his frame. "I bargained in truth. I hold the elder girl and delivered her. The younger was lost. Do not place that at my gate." "Lost," Catelyn echoed, the word raw as flayed skin. Bolton turned to her. "Lady Stark, place Lady Sansa upon a mount and ride. Take what men remain and go." He shifted pale gaze to Tywin. "Lord Lannister, we withdraw likewise. Any man who lifts steel will die on this field." Rain slackened to a fine mist. Karstark spat, but slowly lowered his sword. One by one, weapons dipped. The mud smelled of iron and horse droppings. Jaime released the spear, hands numb. Across the churned ground he saw Sansa mounted behind Edmure, hair plastered darkly to her cheeks. She looked back, eyes huge, met Jaime's gaze, then turned away as her escort wheeled south, skirting Bolton lines, vanishing into drenched trees. Karstark limped toward his own men, face bleak. Tywin signaled, and redcapes formed around him, guiding Jaime and the knights to drier rise. Bolton watched them all with the same detachment one might grant to ants in a rain-flooded anthill. When the meadow emptied but for corpses and broken lances, he dismounted, knelt in mud, and pressed a gloved hand to the earth as though reading the world's slow pulse. Lightning cracked far off, illuminating his silhouette against pale sky. That night, the northern camp lay in grim hush on the east bank of the Blue Fork. Tents sagged under water weight. Cookfires hissed. Karstark's wounded moaned, and somewhere Grey Wind paced unseen, mourning the stench of lost honor. In the command tent, Catelyn stood beside Robb's empty chair. He had not yet returned from a rain-soaked ride to speak quiet words with Lord Karstark, words Catelyn feared would leave deeper wounds than any Lannister blade. Talisa moved about tending scrolls of supply counts, trying to keep hands busy. Sansa sat on a low bench, a wool blanket drawn around her shoulders. She looked thinner than Catelyn remembered, cheeks hollowed by southern worry, but her posture remained poised, nobility carved into bone. Catelyn knelt before her daughter and brushed damp hair aside. "I failed you," she whispered. Sansa shook her head. "You came, mother. You came." Tears threatened. Catelyn swallowed them. "Arya yet lives. Somewhere. We'll search every road." A gust rattled the tent flap. Talisa glanced up. "We should warm broth," she said. "Lady Sansa needs strength." Catelyn nodded. "Yes, food." She helped her daughter to the chair meant for a king and wrapped an extra cloak around thin shoulders. Outside, hoofbeats approached, heavy, plodding. The flap parted, and Robb entered. Sodden cloak streaked with mud, Grey Wind at heel. His eyes flicked from Sansa to Catelyn, reading their Unspoken. Without a word, he crossed to the table, seized a wine pitcher, and poured into a copper goblet. Red spilled over the rim like blood on parchment. "Karstark demands Jaime's head," he said. "He cannot have it," Catelyn replied. Robb drank, wiped his mouth with the back of his wrist. "He will try regardless. We hold the lion only by Bolton's presence." He glanced at Sansa. The girl bowed her head lower. Robb's voice softened. "I'm glad you're safe." "Thank you, Your Grace," she said. Robb winced at the formality. The wind flogged the canvas. Sparks leapt from the brazier. "We march at dawn," he said. "The Freys will open the crossing or find my walls built against theirs. Once north, we hold the neck." Catelyn sensed the tremor beneath his resolve. "And Karstark? I will send his wounded under guard to Riverrun. The rest ride with us. Vengeance can wait until winter's thaw." Grey Wind padded to Sansa's bench, sniffed her hand, then licked salt from her skin. She managed the faintest smile. Robb watched, something gentle flickering in his eyes before he steeled himself again. West of the ford, in Tywin's camp, Jaime sat near a brazier, cloak steaming. Ser Adam Marbrand knelt cleaning a dent from Jaime's gorget. Nearby, Pycelle fussed with poultices that Jaime ignored. Tywin stood over a mapboard, moving carved lions across stained leather. He spoke without looking up. "Your sister will be pleased by your return." Jaime flexed sore fingers. "I imagine Cersei's pleasure will cool when she learns her father offered half a treaty and provoked a blood feud." Tywin placed a lion atop a wooden tower representing Riverrun. "Stark honor undid itself today. Karstark will tear Robb's camp apart or desert him to chase vengeance. Walder Frey will close his gates the moment the boy looks hungry." "Memnokan." Jaime smirked. "And Bolton?" "Bolton follows victors," Tywin said. "I prefer such men near my pawns, not my throne." "And me, father? Am I a pawn as well?" Tywin's eyes lifted. Lion's eyes, ancient and unblinking. "A knight may sacrifice a pawn," he said. "But a knight returned to the board can still checkmate kings." He placed a gilded figurine on the neck, just north of Moat Cailin. "Winter comes. Wolves lose footing on ice." Jaime stared into the brazier. Sparks danced like wildfire sprites. He remembered the green light, the word kinslayer, the child's accusing gaze. He wondered if Starks dreamed of him as often as he dreamed of their dead. On the northern road to Winterfell, Bran Stark lay awake in his bedchamber, wind moaning through arrow slits. The castle felt wrong. Voices in the yard, strange doors closing too softly, the hush of people afraid to speak. Dan had come that evening, oily smile beneath damp hair, declaring himself Prince of Winterfell. He'd tried to laugh, to pat Bran's arm like an old friend. Hodor had trembled. Maester Luwin had swallowed fear and spoken calm words about guest right that everyone knew Theon would ignore. Bran closed his eyes and fell into the wolf dream. He padded along stone corridors on silent paws, smelling iron and ash. He sensed Rickon curled beneath furs 3 chambers away, breath quick with nightmares, and felt Hodor's slow sorrow leaking through the walls like melting wax. In the Godswood, the heart tree bled sap that smelled of salt sea. Bran raised his snout and howled. Somewhere beyond cold stone, the pack in the wild answered. When he woke, moonlight silvered the bed frame. Soft footfalls sounded outside, too soft for guards. A shadow slipped through the door. Mira Reed, hair damp and dark, spear in hand. "Prince Bran," she whispered. "We go, now." Bran's heart thudded. "Hodor." Jojen wakes him. She crossed the floor, knelt to lift Bran onto a willow frame carry loop. "Fletcher's boys have the postern unbarred. They'll cover our flight." Bran grabbed her wrist. "Rickon too." "Yes, both of you." She hefted him with surprising strength. Theon's eyes are blinded by pride. He will not see small shadows slip beneath his own walls. Bran nodded, tears hot. The wolf dream echoed inside him. Pack, flight, hidden paths through night silver leaves. As Mira bore him toward the door, he looked back once at the window. Stars glittered cold and distant, but somewhere the heart tree still whispered of old gods who watched, patient as stone and deep as root. Atop the battlements of the Dreadfort, Ramsay Snow watched the north sky and inhaled the scent of wet clay rising from the moors. Ravens flapped from tower to tower, startled by torchlight's sudden flare. Ramsay plucked one from the air with gloved hand, felt its heart hammer, then released it. The bird vanished into rain. He smiled. Every storm swept opportunity down from the hills, if one knew how to sift the mud. Bolton banners flew above him now, but soon perhaps another sigil might rise. One flayed, one crowned. In the dark, between lightning flashes, he could almost imagine the scream of skin from flesh, as the north ripped itself apart. Behind him, a stable boy whimpered around a leather bit. Ramsay's smile widened. The future required practice after all. Days bled into nights across a war-shaken realm. Stannis' black sails cut through storm surf off Dragonstone, flaming heart shining dour red against gray waves. In King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister measured wildfire stalks by candlelight, while Joffrey boasted of drowning rebels in his own chamber pot. On Pike, Balon Greyjoy read word of his son's bold capture of Winterfell, and read it again, searching for the measure between valiance and recklessness. But in the camps along the Green Fork, beneath dripping canvas and threadbare hopes, the young wolf counted losses, not in men but in trust. Karstark's rage simmered. Umber loyalty wavered. Frey messages arrived colder each time, demanding restitution, promising storm. Catelyn prayed by night to silent gods. Talisa bound wounds that would not heal. And Sansa sat in the corner of the healer's tent teaching orphan boys to sing northern lullabies, because song was the only salve left to her. One crisp morning Robb found her there, voice soft amid the reek of poultice and damp straw. "Oh, my little one, my gentle one, winter shall cover the fields of sun, but spring sleeps deep in the seed of stone, and the hearth remembers the flame. Meburan." The tune wavered as she saw Robb. The boys shuffled, shy. Robb knelt. "Keep singing," he said. She did, her voice a trembling thread that stitched hope across cracked timbers. Outside, the wind carried scent of frost, burst breath of winter's prowl. Robb closed his eyes and listened, and in the distance he heard other notes. Horns, drums, the murmur of 10,000 men waiting for a king to decide whether wolves would feast on lion flesh or wither hungry beneath snows that cared nothing for crowns. Crows gathered on the roof of the inn at the crossroads. 2 nights after the failed exchange, a pale rider approached under starlit cloudbreak. "Catelyn," He tied his horse, entered the taproom, and set a small carved box upon the bar. The innkeep, sleepless since the slaughter, dared not ask the Pale Rider's name. "Send this north," the stranger said, "to the Lady of Winterfell, wherever she is found. Say it comes from the bastard of Bolton, with sympathy for her loss." He left a coin, a golden dragon minted in King Aerys's reign, and rode into darkness. The innkeep opened the box. Inside lay a single direwolf fang, snapped clean, stained brown red at the root. He slammed the lid shut, sweat chilling his spine. Outside, crows flapped and cawed, hungry for morning. Above, in a sky clearing to thin moon shards, ravens from Old Town stroked south beneath a scattering of early stars, bearing scrolls inked with the first white ravens of the season. Winter had been declared. Across Westeros, men woke shivering not from cold, but from the knowledge that soon frost would shroud burned fields and bury corpses where they lay. And as the first snows swirled into Riverrun's valleys, the game of crowns slowed, for armies marched poorly in drifts. Yet whispers moved like sparks on dry tinder. A wolf king hemmed by lions and traitors. A lion lord whose son's freedom cost more than gold. A kraken in a stolen keep. A flayed man poised to swap cloaks. A stag fleet riding storms toward the capital. And somewhere on dusty roads beyond war's maps, a wolf girl ran with fires in her eyes and steel in her hand, learning all the tongues of death. Inside Robb's command tent on the eve of winter's first snow, Lord Roose Bolton approached the king at council. Gray wind bristled at his scent but did not growl. Catelyn and Sansa sat nearby, sewing bandages. Lords Greyjohn and Smalljon argued quietly over forage quotas. Talisa checked ledgers. Edmure scanned letters from scouts. Bolton bowed. "Your Grace, a raven from the twins. Lord Walder invites you to a wedding feast. His son, Sir Perwyn, takes a new bride. Ties of amity," he writes, "are sweetest when warmed by hearth." Bema, Seto. Robb's jaw tightened. "A feast while the realm freezes. Hospitality endures," Bolton replied. Catelyn looked up sharply. "We cannot spurn him, Robb. Walder Frey's pride bristles like boar's hide. Every slight hardens his resolve." Robb tapped the map table. "We ride north tomorrow. Winter roads grow treacherous. Crossing can wait until spring." Bolton's eyes were glass. "Spring is a promise, Your Grace. Feasts are certainty." Winterfell. Thunder rolled beyond the tent, though no lightning flashed. Robb exhaled, felt the crown's weight press deeper than any helm. At length, he nodded. "We attend the Freys, then we march." He turned to Sansa. "Will you ride with us to the Twins? From there we'll send you to White Harbor, to sail for the Vale perhaps, until the war has settled." Sansa folded her seam, thread trembling. "Thank you, Your Grace. I will do as my family bids." The tent felt suddenly colder. Catelyn squeezed Sansa's hand beneath the lamplight. Outside, snowflakes drifted on the wind, melting on tent canvas before sliding as droplets to the trampled earth. First snow, soft and silent, and filled with portents. In King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister cracked open a fresh cask of Myrish wine, sighed and said to Bran, "Send word to father that his counterfeit hostage ploy cost him an army's worth of goodwill." Bran shrugged, feet on the table. "Goodwill once stopped Stannis' fleet. Neither will wildfire if the alchemists blow a sky high beforehand," Tyrion muttered. He poured 2 cups, pushed one to Bran. Candlelight flickered across the impious scarred brow. "I expected father's mischief, but risking Jaime again." A knock interrupted. A lanky courier entered, cloak dripping. "Message from Sir Kevin, at the Trident." Tyrion broke the seal. As he read, color bled from his cheeks. "Well?" Bran asked. Tyrion drained his cup in one swallow. "Bolton rides with us now, it says. Or perhaps with nobody. Gods old and new help the north. If Bolton's spiders spin for him alone, we may all drown in their silk before long." Bran tilted his cup. "Silk burns." "Not fast enough," Tyrion whispered. The Raven carrying Bolton's box reached Winterfell's smoldering courtyards at dawn 6 days later. But Bran and Rickon were gone, vanished into the wolfswood under guided flight. Maester Luwin opened the box in Theon's solar and frowned at the tooth within. "A message," he said, voice gray. "But from whom? And for what purpose?" Theon picked up the fang, thumb tracing its blood-dark root. "Intimidation," he muttered. But doubt nibbled his bravado. If Bolton signaled allegiance, why send fear? If threat, why cloak it in sympathy? He recalled stories of the Dreadfort, of skinned men screaming beneath pink skies, and felt cold settle behind his ribs. Luwin watched him, gentled eyes hiding storms. "Prince Theon," he said, "winter will test every claim. Steel dulls in frost if not warmed by truth." Theon almost laughed. Truth, in a world where friends traded brothers for crowns. He tossed the fang back into the box, snapped the lid. Outside, smoke from the smithy rose straight despite the wind, a spear of black stabbing the whitening sky. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully buried Karstark dead beside his own fallen, though the Lord of Carhold refused to attend. Stone cairns dotted the riverbank like broken teeth. Light snow dusted each mound. When the thaw came again, no one knew whose bones lay beneath which stone. Lord Rickard finally departed one icy dawn. Banners half furled, daughters' ghosts riding at his stirrup. He left behind a letter naming Robb Stark Oathbreaker in all but word. Catelyn watched the company recede down the eastern road, and wondered if she had glimpsed the moment the north itself began to fracture, long before swords crossed at any hall. Beyond the wall, white winds howled over fist of the first men. Jon Snow, cloak rimmed in frost, saw watchers at cliff edge raise a horn of old bone. One blast, then two, then three. But those were tidings for another tale, in another land of snow and shadow. South of the ice, the game of wolves and lions churned on muddy rivers and betrayal slick halls, bound by debts of blood and vows half kept, moving steadily, inch by inch, toward nights where songs would name no victor, only the silence that follows ruin. Night settled over the war-fat realm, and winter's first true storm swept down from the lands of always winter, cloaking sky and field alike. In that hush between lightning cracks, men dreamed. Jaime Lannister dreamed of a weirwood whose face wept wildfire tears. Catelyn Stark dreamed of a silent river swallowing crowns. Robb Stark dreamed of a bridge built of bones, every stone engraved with the names of friends. Sansa Stark dreamed of snow falling soft on the Erie's empty courtyard, and a song sung in the voice of a lost sister. Theon Greyjoy dreamed of watery halls echoing his name, though none answered. Roose Bolton dreamed of a dinner hall where knives flashed in candlelight and blood drummed upon harp strings. And somewhere a small girl with wolf eyes and a dagger of Valyrian steel whispered the names of those whose dreams she would shatter. Snow thickened, muffling drums, cloaking banners, gathering upon blades that no longer gleamed but rusted under breath of cold seasons. Winter had come, and with it a promise older than any throne. In the end, all the games of summer yield to the quiet dominion of ice. Gennin. Snow sifted through the pre-dawn hush like drifting ash, whispering across canvas and armor alike, until every ridge of the young wolf's camp grew pale beneath a powder veil. At the heart of the encampment the command pavilion stood dark, its lamplight extinguished hours before, yet Robb Stark had not slept. He lingered outside now, gauntleted hands curled round a steaming tin cup, gray wind nosing along the fresh-laid snow at his feet. The direwolf's breath clouded white, his amber eyes scanned the outer pickets where umber sentries hunched beside braziers that glowed cherry-red against shadow. Beyond, the great Greywater Road snaked south, lost quickly in the drifting murk. Somewhere along its frozen bends lay the moat, and beyond that, the twins. Robb tasted iron in the wind, a warning colder than any blade edge. Inside the pavilion, Catelyn and Talisa bent together over a litter where the fevered sergeant Delp lay twitching beneath blankets. Talisa dripped willow bark distillate between his lips, while Catelyn sponged sweat from a brow that burned despite the chill seeping through the tent seams. The man muttered of weirwoods that wept milk-white sap, and of ravens wearing flayed faces. Nonsense born of wound fever. Yet his words made Talisa glance uneasily at the shadowed canvas walls. When Catelyn emerged, She found Robb still pacing. "You need rest," she whispered. "So they tell me." He watched snow gather on the rim of the cup. "Before dawn we ride. I would have spoken with Lord Karstark, but he's gone to his men. And Bolton? Bolton is a cat who leaves no paw prints in new snow. They will fall in behind you once the river's behind us," Catelyn said. Yet she heard the thinness of the assurance. The wolves marched toward a bridge, guarded by men who called themselves allies, only when courtesy compelled it. Robb drained the cup. "Talisa says the fever has turned. Delp will live, if we can keep him warm. Namindan Pebati. You listen to her counsel more than Maester Vyman's. I trust the healer who bled beside us at Oxcross." Robb's mouth curved, fondness quick but clear. Though it vexes lords who think a king should prize lineage over skill. Catelyn studied her son and saw the boy who once chased arrows in Winterfell's yard, but now wrapped in a mantle of weariness stitched by death and duty. Robb. A horn lowed from the east picket. One breath, then silence. Gray wind lifted his muzzle, ears pricking. "Riders," Robb said, and strode toward the perimeter. They came through the pale, with snow crusted on mail. 5 Blackfish scouts, Edmure's best. Their captain swung down, cheeks raw in the cold. "Frey outridders 2 leagues off, your grace. They shadow but hold distance. Lord Walder means to remind us whose bridge we march toward," Robb said. "Signal him, we come as guests." We did. They loosed 1 crossbow quarrel above our heads to be sure we understood. Catelyn set her jaw. She had broken bread under Walder Frey's roof once, and still she tasted sawdust when memory rose. "Then every word we speak beyond the neck must be weighed," she said. "Walder plays his games with ears wide." Robb dismissed the scouts. "Rouse the camp. We ride at first light." By dawn the column of Northmen poured across the wind-scoured flats, hooves muffled in snow, banners furled beneath oiled canvas. Karstark's gray sunburst, Umber's roaring giant, Mormont's black bear, Bolton's flayed man. Each withheld its color, as though ashamed to shine upon the road they took. Sledges bearing wounded creaked in the ruts. Supply wagons groaned, and above it all sounded the low, restless rumble of 6,000 men who mistrusted the ground under their boots. Robb rode near the van with Lord Grachan upon his right, and Roose Bolton gliding silent to the left. Bolton wore a cloak of pale pink wool trimmed with white fox. A single drop of dried blood marred the hem near his spur, as if he had stepped carelessly across a battlefield and come away unscathed. "Lord Walder's letter said the feast commences at dusk," Bolton murmured. "We may arrive before sunset if the road holds." Grachan spat into the snow. "Walder can bloody well wait. My belly's full of oat mush and my boots of melted slush. I'll feast when I please." Bolton's lips quirked. "He serves hot venison with pears and wine," he said. "Salted trout fresh from the Green Fork, and sweetbreads in honey sauce. A man might forgive insults over such a board." "A man might swallow a dagger too," Greyjohn said. "Keep one eye on the pies." The jest earned a rumble of laughter from riders near, but Bolton only inclined his head. Behind the king's party rode Sansa on a grey palfrey, sandwiched between Mage Mormont and Talisa for protection. The girl's gloved hands clenched the reins. She had said little since departing the Blue Fork, speaking only in courtesy to those who asked. Talisa now edged her mare alongside. "You ride well, my lady." "Thank you," Sansa replied. Snowflakes stippled her hood. Her gaze stayed fixed on Robb's broad back, and the direwolf coursing ahead, vanishing and reappearing between the ranks like a ghost woven from mist. Talisa ventured, "When we reach White Harbor, Lord Wyman's court is gentle. He has granddaughters near your age." "I will be content with quiet," Sansa said, then paused. "And with letters, I will send letters to Mother and to Arya, wherever she is." Talisa laid a hand upon her arm. "Words are sometimes lights in dark halls." Sansa forced a smile, but in her mind letters fluttered away like caged birds loosed into winter skies, vanishing before ever finding the hands they sought. That same morning, at a ridge within sight of the Boar's Tooth, Jaime Lannister's escort rode hard for Harrenhal. Frost rhymed the Kingslayer's breath, and pain lanced his wrists each time the reins jerked. Still, his mood lifted with every mile set between him and Karstark's steel. He tried to imagine Cersei's face when he strode into the red keep hole. But the picture slid away behind a curtain of wildfire green. Tywin led the van, crimson cloak streaming. Sir Adam Marbrand kept pace alongside Jaime. "We turn east after the next ford," Marbrand said, voice muffled by scarf. "Your father means us to shelter at Harrenhal while the snows set in. Assemble fresh strength come spring." "Harrenhal eats armies," Jaime said. "Ask half the knights who have held it. They died of fear," Marbrand replied. "Not of walls," Jaime laughed. "Then I shall choke on boredom." He glanced back at the columns. Gold lions, crossbowmen, trebuchets under tarps. The host looked mighty still, yet their tail wagged slower in the snow. Tywin's war depended upon roads and coin, and both now sank beneath white drifts. Ahead, the ruined towers of Harrenhal clawed the sky, black fingers against gray cloud. Jaime felt a prickle at the nape of his neck. The last time he had passed those walls, his sword had been Kingsguard steel, and his oath bound to smoke. The ghosts of Aerys' last prisoners still prowled the dungeons, they said. He wondered if ghosts cared which lion wore the chain. Across the narrow sea, twin chem-green firepots hissed atop a stone brazier in the bowels of the House of the Undying. Shadow hands stirred them with ivory rods carved to dragon heads. In the flames' warped glare, a child with dark violet eyes watched illusion upon illusion flicker on tiers of smoke. A wolf king bleeding out beneath a switch knife. A red wedding veil soaked through. A maiden with blooming roses sprouting from her ribcage. She tilted her head. The pattern weaves. The Undying croaked in many voices. Blood in a cup. Salt in the snow. The girl reached toward the images, but the breath of ash stung her palm, and she drew back. She would remember the visions, though, every shiver of silk and glint of dagger. Memory was the first gift of prophecy, and burden the second. At Winterfell noon passed unnoticed. Thick flakes drifted over ward and walkway, settling in the scrapes left by Theon's Ironborn. The stolen keep felt smaller now, corridors shrinking with every draft, staircases groaning like shipplanks in storm. Theon walked the Godswood path where footprints of direwolves once pressed the snow. Now there were only tracks of boot leather and one set of wagon wheels from timber halls. He fingered the direwolf fang Bolton had sent, tucked in his pouch like a talisman that burned cold. Black Lauren strode beside him. Ramsay's men reached the Dreadfort gates within the week. Reinforcements. Good. The lads grow restless. The lads? Theon heard the brittle edge in his voice. They drink and whore while I shoulder the banners. Lauren shrugged. Reavers trust deeds. Bring them red wedding spoils, they'll sing your name. Theon stopped beneath the heart tree. Crimson leaves sagged under snow weight, the carved face weeping frozen tears. Sing, he echoed. The thought of songs bearing his name felt suddenly obscene. He pictured Bran's vacant bed, Rickon's scattered toys, old Nan's chair toppled by Ironborn fists. Songs indeed. A crow cried overhead, black wings smudging white sky. Lauren spat. Bloody omen birds. Theon forced a grin. Bloody is the North's new banner. Yet his laughter died in the brittle air. Long leagues south and east, at Storm's End's ash-scarred parapets, Sir Davos Seaworth braced against the salt wind while Stannis Baratheon stood rigid above the surging tide. The Onion Knight tugged his cloak closer, but the king wore only mail and a dour expression carved of rock. He studied breakers smashing the pylons where lantern towers once blazed before Tyrion's wildfire gutted the Blackwater fleet. Leniency breeds rebellion, Stannis said, gaze never shifting from the sea. But betrayal must be answered in kind. The boy king gambles with mad pyromancers, the lions skulk behind twins and flayed men. All the while the North bleeds itself white. Davos cleared his throat. Lord Karstark's defection may yet sour the North on the young wolf. If we reach them first, we shall reach them after, the king snapped. The ships rebuild slower than plots. He drew breath. Lady Melisandre dreams again of snow, of a frozen river of corpses. She says the realm's war is candle flame beneath the coming night. Davos suppressed a shiver that owed nothing to the sea wind. Then we must remain a hotter flame, your grace. Perhaps. Stannis' hard mouth slid further into darkness. Have the smiths double the pace. Every oar we set come spring may rue winter, but they will pull. Davos bowed. As my king commands. He left the battlement feeling the weight of a war yet unfought settle upon shoulders already bent under the one just lost. Evening found Robb's host encamped half a league from the twins, beyond long fields crusted in hoarfrost. Twin towers, gray stone against sinking crimson sky, loomed across the river, windows agleam with torchlight. From this distance, they resembled two immense tombstones guarding a grave no one dared name. Horn calls drifted over the water, Frey greetings or warnings, according to whose ear heard. In the Stark campfires sparked and men hunched close around them, rubbing hands. Salt pork sizzled in kettles. Someone plucked a lute, though the instrument quickly fell out of tune in the cold. In the king's pavilion, Roose Bolton removed gauntlets with delicate precision. The bridge wardens accept your attendance, your grace. They request you enter the west tower at the third bell for welcome cups. Do they? Robb sat on a folding chair, elbows on knees, studying a weirwood bark map Talisa had sketched of the twins' hall layout. Corridors, hearths, kitchens, as though knowledge of walls might hold off treason. He'd insisted she prepare it. The healer's neat hand served here as well as stitches. Great John jabbed a finger at the map. Dot. We quarter half within East Tower, half without. No man goes unarmed. Guest right forbids steal at the board, Catelyn reminded gently. Great John scowled. Then strap daggers to our thighs beneath the trews. Guest right forbids naught unseen. Bolton's smooth voice oiled the chill. Better to obey custom. To betray guest right is to call down every god in sky and soil. Great John barked a laugh. The phrase piss on gods when coin glints. I piss back. Robb rubbed tired eyes. We cannot insult our hosts by appearing distrustful. Yet neither shall we walk blind. Mother, choose 30 guards of proven loyalty. Mage Mormont, you command them. They attend the feast, cloaked and unarmed. He looked to Bolton. Your men keep watch on the camp and the bridge approach. Bolton inclined his head, the candlelight sliding across pale eyes like a winter moon on ice. You command. Talisa laid a gentle hand on Robb's shoulder after Bolton departed. Kings heal nothing by starving themselves. Your plate remains untouched. Nah. I have no hunger. Then thirst. She poured thin ale into a wooden cup. He drank, grateful for warmth, sliding down. She bent close, whispered. You offered to wed the Frey girl once. Could you not renew that offer? My honor is given elsewhere, he said, voice thick. He tipped the cup again. Catelyn watched the exchange from the tent's rear, needle still in hand, thread dangling. She stitched without seeing. Honor weighted each loop, each pull. When the seam ended, she knotted it, bit the thread, and prayed the gods old and new bound life more firmly than cloth. Midnight at the twins. Snow powdered the stone bridge, muffling the tramp of Stark sentries posted at its midpoint. Beneath, the arched dark water slid sluggish, black skin shimmering under slivered moon. In the West Tower feast hall, tables already lay with linen and polished plate waiting for dawn to dress them in roast and wine. Inside a lesser chamber, Lord Walder Frey hunched in a high-backed chair beside an iron brazier that spit sparks at each timber's crack. His newest wife, Mariah? Mella? He no longer cared to recall names. Dozed on a cushioned bench, the swell of her belly rounded beneath fur. Walder's milky eyes lingered on it briefly before shifting to the half-dozen kinsmen assembled near the brazier. Sir Hostine, black-browed and broad. Sir Raymond, sleek and sly. Young lame Lothar blinking behind watery eyes. Bolton's pigeons coo, Walder said, voice papery. The Norse wolf comes axeless, but his claws remain. We pluck them at table, else they rend us in summer thaw. Hostine slammed fist to palm. Bolt the doors once graces said. Archers in the gallery loose at signal. Bah. Too crude. murmured Lothar. Better the musicians begin the song high and merry. Then clash steel to string. Walder smirked. I like music. See, they play loud enough to drown the screaming. Scabrous laughter escaped his throat, a sound like parchment tearing. Sir Raymond shuffled forward. And the girl Stark, Lady Sansa. The wolf's red flower. Bolton would have her march north to barter again. Walder's face puckered in disgust. Child brides bore me. If Bolton wants her, let him keep her. The lion's debt will outlive this snow. He leaned upon his stick. Mark me, nephews, once the dirge ends and wolves lie gutted, a new tune will carry us to court. Thou'll name us saviors of the south. Lothar bowed. As you say, Lord Father. Outside wind rattled a casement. Walder's eyes turned toward the sound, and for a heartbeat the old man imagined he heard far-off howls riding the gale. Wolves gathering along some unseen ridge. He spat into the brazier. The hiss pleased him. Song or howl, men die the same, he muttered, and sent the kinsmen to their tasks. The dawn preceding the Frey feast broke soft. The sky pale rose behind gauze thin cloud. Sansa Stark stood on a bluff above the Stark tents, snow muffling her footfalls. She breathed deep of winter-sharpened air, felt it sting her lungs, and remembered winter days at Winterfell, when Bran would race the yard in wooden stirrups, and Arya pelted father with snowballs until he surrendered in laughter. Memory bit deeper than cold. Footsteps crunched behind. She turned to see Roose Bolton, face impassive beneath hood. He carried a sprig of evergreen in gloved hand. "My lady," he said, and inclined his head. "Lord Bolton." "I walk to ease the bones," he said. "May I accompany you?" An instinct, newborn since King's Landing, told her no good favor grew from flayed sigils. Yet courtesy held. "If you wish." They strolled the bluff. Snowflakes clung to Bolton's lashes without melting, as though cold mirrored his blood. "The North owes you loyalty," he said. "You and your sister. Should peril find you, remember House Bolton keeps ancient oaths." Sansa's grip tightened on her cloak. "My family counts friends carefully." "Friends," Bolton echoed. "Enemies sooner. But often the same men serve both roles, only at differing hours." He extended the evergreen sprig. "A token. Pine endures winter that oak might not." Sansa accepted, though the needles pricked her glove. "Thank you, my lord." Bolton bowed and drifted away, footfalls silent where hers sank audible. She watched until his pink cloak vanished among tents, then stared at the sprig. Resilience, he'd implied. Yet pine also burned quick and bright in hearth fires. She turned it between fingers, and for a moment, imagined thrusting the sharp needles into his pale throat. The thought shocked her so that she let the sprig fall half buried in snow. Across the same early light, on a rocky crest north of Winterfell, Bran Stark awoke in a hollow, among twisted birches. A thin pelt of snow covered his legs, but Mira crouched nearby, coaxing sparks onto dry moss. Hodor sat huddled round Rickon, who gnawed a strip of salted pork, and scowled at the trees. Jojen sat cross-legged, eyes half-lidded. "The storm drives Theon to folly," he murmured. "Tonight Winterfell catches fire." Bran blinked. "Fire? From where?" "From within." Jojen's green eyes opened fully. "A candle is soon ablaze when a kingdom is tinder." He looked to the smoking tinder nest Mira nursed. "We must be further gone by dusk." Bran breathed crisp air through cracked lips. Far off, he sensed summer ranging, paws crunching crusted snow, nose to the wind like gray winds echo. Wolves north and south, both bound to boys hunted by men wearing the wrong skins. "The gods guide us," Bran whispered. "The gods speak," Jojen corrected. "Men seldom hear." Bran shut his eyes and listened hard. He heard wind in bare limbs, river ice creaking, distant ravens quarking. Between each sound lingered another note, faint yet steady, like a harp string struck beneath the world. He did not understand the tune, but it comforted him more than any father's song. Evening found the Stark host marshalling before the twins' bridge. Robb wore a mantle of thick gray fox over black ringmail, direwolf crown braided into his auburn hair. At his side rode Catelyn in river blue satin trimmed with lynx. Talisa behind, cloak clasped by a silver leaf brooch. Mage Mormont led 36 chosen men and women, unarmed, but for hidden knives, faces stern. Frey torch banners flickered atop tower battlements. The drawbridge chains rattled, timber slab descending inch by inch until it thudded onto stone apron. Snow dust rose. A single figure appeared. Sir Ryman Frey, thin mustache drooping. He bowed low. Lord Walder bids the king in the north welcome and begs he warm himself with cup and hearth. Robb urged his horse forward. Lead on, sir. Our thanks for your hospitality. Ryman smiled, but his eyes darted to the flanking guards as though counting them twice. He turned and escorted the party across. Catelyn's gaze slipped to the murky river below. Ice floes drifting, catching starlight like slivers of broken shields. She felt in her marrow that each shard bore a name, though she could not read them yet. Inside the west keep's courtyard braziers blazed, casting long shadows across standard crates stacked high. Servants in Frey livery lined the causeway, heads bowed. The smell of roasting mutton mixed with pine resin smoke. A stable lad hurried to take Robb's reins. Grey wind padded close at the king's heel, fur spiking along spine. At the hall doors, Ryman Frey lifted a hand. My lord grandfather requests the direwolf remain without. Robb glanced down at Grey Wind. The beast's yellow eyes fixed on the Freyser and lips peeled. For a heartbeat Robb seemed as though he might reject the demand, but he exhaled. Grey Wind, stay. The wolf circled once, whining low, then settled on haunches outside the lintel, tail sweeping snowmelt puddles. Catelyn's unease tightened. To bar a Stark direwolf was to shear the king's shadow from him. Inside, heat wrapped them. Trestle tables stretched the length of the hall, platters of steaming meats and crusty loaves awaiting carvers. Tarred reeds smoked in iron sconces. Above, balcony galleries crowded with Frey archers wearing doublets the hue of old bruises. Music struck up, lutes piping, drums beating a jaunty measure. A song Catelyn recognized. The maiden fair, odd for supper greeting. Yet she told herself customs differed by river. Lord Walder perched upon his dais, skin sagging, eyes bright. My honored guests, he croaked, arms opening like a scarecrow's. Come, be seated. The wine runs warmer than this cursed snow. Memo curry. Robb mounted the low platform and bowed with all the grace Ned had taught him at Winterfell. That we share your table gladdens my heart, Lord Walder. Walder's grin showed 2 brown stumps. A heart may be gladdened many ways. Mine by daughters' smiles. There, behind you. He gestured. Rosalind Frey stepped shyly into view, cheeks pink Ottawan. Soft harp accents followed. Robb turned. Lady Rosalind, he said. He bowed again, though the gesture carried the weight of apology. The girl blushed deeper. Walder cackled. She dotes on music. You'll dance together before night folds, perhaps? Minds. Robb managed a courteous nod. My lady wife enjoys dancing as well, he said, nodding to Talisa. The healer curtsied, smile polite. Walder's eyes flicked over her foreign garb, unamused. Yes, quite. The company settled. Catelyn found herself placed between Sir Raymond Frey and Lady Merrill, Walder's 7th daughter. Sansa sat further down beneath banners where bright wine cups already stood near full. She kept gaze lowered, hands clasped. Plates were filled. Song changed tempo, piping quicker. Men drank. Walder raised a hand. A hush fell like frost. Tradition, he rasped. He lifted a crust, broke it. Bread and salt. His steward carried trencher and cellar saltbox down the tables. Each guest pinched a crystal, touched crust to lips. Guest right invoked. A sigh shivered through Catelyn's bones. Relief, or dread born deeper. She chose relief, for choice was all she owned. Walder clapped. Now eat. Forks met roast, pitchers tipped. Laughter grew brittle. Robb conversed politely with Rosalind, Talisa on his other side. Catelyn caught snatches, talk of Riverrun roses, of summer trout. Lords Greatjon and Smalljon began a drinking contest. Lothar Frey coaxed them on. Maegor Mormont's chosen guard took plates, but not cups. Cross. Roose Bolton ate slowly, lips drawn. His eyes occasionally drifted upward to the balconies where archers leaned upon rails, strings slack. He caught Catelyn's gaze, offered a thin curve of mouth. Neither smile nor warning. The musicians shifted again. The tune slid into The Rains of Castamere, a strange choice under Frey roof. Murmurs fluttered. Walder lifted a goblet. A lion's lament for winter's night, he quipped. It warms the blood. Catelyn's pulse quickened. She rose halfway. My lord, perhaps we should hear a North song. Steel rasped. Archers knocked arrows, sudden as shudders in gale. The hall stilled. Walder stood. Yet some blood chills, he said. Now. The first arrow took Daisy Mormont through the throat. Another skewered Smulgen's chest. Lord Umber toppled, wine sloshing crimson. Musicians flung shawls aside, revealing mail. Crossbows clacked. Catelyn snatched the dagger from Raymond's belt, pressed it to the man's side. Let them go, she screamed. Frey guards seized Talisa. One drove a short spear through her belly. Robb roared, half risen, but bolts hammered his shoulder, thigh, hip. He staggered. Sansa cried out, but archers trained up. Chaos churned, tables overturned, platters crashing, men scrambling toward weapons that were never allowed. Grey wind howled outside, feral and savage. But heavy doors slammed, chains dropping. Catelyn drove dagger into Raymond's ribs, felt cartilage popped out cartilage. Blood spattered her sleeve. Walder's laughter cracked through the shrieks. Only guest right broken here is yours. Robb knelt by Talisa, hands slick. Her mouth moved, no words came. Frey spearmen advanced. Catelyn seized Walder's feeble young wife, blade to her throat. Robb, she screamed. Go, they'll let you live. Bolts thudded into his back. He lurched upright, crown fallen, eyes clouded with disbelief. He looked at Catelyn, lips parted, and tried to speak her name. No sound. She saw the boy in him one last instant. Then he fell beside his love. Catelyn's heart burst. She slashed the girl's throat, red spray across dais. A bolt struck her spine. Hammer blow. Hand seized her hair, yanked back. She felt steel at her own throat. Cool, cold, colder. Her last sight was Walder Frey's withered smile, and her last thought was of Bran's small hands grasping ravens on Winterfell's roof. Steel sang, darkness took her. Moonless night lay over the twins like a lid. In the courtyard where slaughter now pooled, Roose Bolton strode among corpses, cloak unmarred. He stooped by the fallen direwolf pup. The Frey kennels had loosed dogs to silence Grey Fangs. Both beast and hounds lay dead. Bolton wiped his gloved fingers on the wolf's matted fur, then turned toward the main gate. Ser Hostin Frey approached, breath steaming. Long live King Joffrey, he said, half laughing. Long live the king, Bolton echoed. He mounted a waiting horse. To Hostin he murmured, the wolf dies, the north bends. Send my regards to your father, and send Lady Sansa to the North Road with 20. She travels under House Bolton's guard now. Hostin blinked. Lord Walder promised her to Lord Tywin. Lord Tywin answers to the throne, Bolton said, heel to flank. The throne answers to victors. Tell him the North remembers. Never Main. He rode out under gate torch flare, hooves splashing through fresh blood. Snow drifted down, looked gray in torch glow, and melted red upon contact. At dawn the next day, a gray-white pall engulfed the riverland. Smoke scarred the sky above the twins. Ravens wheeled, croaking their breakfast psalms. On a bluff overlooking the scene, Arya Stark crouched behind a scraggly hawthorn bush. Hot pie at her side, Gendry's hammer across his lap. They had followed rumor to the south bank 2 days before, trailing what they believed was Robb's army. Now they watched men in Frey livery drag dead wolves and northerners alike onto pyres. Arya's throat felt carved hollow. She counted banners fallen, recognized the giant, the merman, the flayed man. Her eyes lingered longest on the direwolf standard trampled in mud, torn and crimson. Hot pie trembled. Let's go, he whispered. One place is like another. No need to stay. Arya's fingers tightened round Needle's hilt. Robb was here, she said. Mother too. And gone. Gendry's voice broke. He cleared it. We can't fight an army, Arya. Maybe not today, she said, voice flat. But the hound hunts even wolves that die. I'll learn its scent. She dragged her gaze from the carnage. South then east. Bravos perhaps. Hot Pie blinked. Across the sea? There are shadows everywhere, Arya murmured. They cannot hide from water dancers. Gendry nodded slowly. If we reach Salt Pans, find a ship. Arya sheathed Needle. We will. She rose. Snow settled on her dark hair. Unheeded. One last glance at smoke-wreathed towers, then she turned away. The three vanished among pines, ghost quiet as falling flakes. Winter settled in truth. At Harrenhal's cracked battlements ice grew like teeth. In King's Landing famine's breath howled through Flea-Bottom. On Dragonstone red priests lit pyres to ward off chill. On Pike ocean gales battered basalt towers to frozen spray. Across every kingdom men huddled close, and spoke in hushed fear of what the snows and stars foretold. Yet in a forgotten pasture west of the Neck, a white raven perched upon an ancient signpost and shook sleet from wings. It cawed once, harsh, premonitory, then launched northwards into the gray, bearing word to every great and petty lord that the long year had ended, that winter lay upon them like a grave shroud, and that there would be no quick thaw. Under that unyielding sky, crowns meant little, oaths less, and each hearth now gambled on whether its last ember might hold against the darkness gathering, unseen, beyond the rim of the world.